Imagine a world where leaders just decide which laws they feel like following.
It sounds kind of crazy, right? Well, that's basically what the Chief Justice, John Roberts, is saying could happen. So we're going to, really dig into his year-end report, right? He's raising these serious concerns about elected officials and maybe ignoring what the Supreme Court says.
Yeah, definitely something we should, be thinking about for sure. It's concerning.
It's like, what's the point of even having laws if they can just be ignored? Right. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you're interested in learning more about this. We're going to take a deep dive into this whole thing. And Roberts, he doesn't hold back. He calls these suggestions straight up dangerous.
Yeah.
He even says that even just talking about ignoring these core rules, even if it doesn't happen all the time, it has to be soundly rejected. What do you think about that?
I think, Roberts is really worried about this idea of, judicial independence, right?
Right. That's a big part of our system. It's how our government is supposed to work. If anyone can just ignore a ruling, the whole idea of checks and balances falls apart.
Checks and balances. Yeah. So that's the idea, right? That each part of the government, keeps the others in check. Right?
Exactly.
It's meant to make sure that no one part gets, too much power. But, if the president or Congress just starts ignoring what the courts say, well, that balance is gone. And that could lead to some pretty serious problems.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about ignoring rulings, right?
Yeah.
Roberts also talks about how some people try to intimidate judges by, accusing them of being biased, basically saying they're just playing politics. And it seems like he sees this as part of a bigger trend where people are just losing respect for the courts.
Yeah, I agree. There's this tendency to just dismiss rulings we don't like as political instead of, respecting the process and the judges who made those decisions.
And this isn't, a brand new thing either. Roberts even talks about the civil rights era, Back then, some states in the South, they didn't want to follow the desegregation orders.
Yeah.
But Roberts points out that presidents like Eisenhower and Kennedy, they made sure those rulings were enforced, even when it wasn't popular.
Right. Like when Eisenhower sent troops to Little Rock, Arkansas, to make sure that schools were integrated.
Exactly. And that's kind of the point Roberts is making, right? Respecting and enforcing those court decisions, even the unpopular ones, is, well, it's crucial for a democracy to function. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets really interesting. Roberts isn't just pointing fingers at one side or the other. He's saying that both sides might be falling into this trap of ignoring the Supreme Court.
Interesting.
He has examples from both, like the Republicans and the Democrats. So on the Republican side, he brings up J.D. Vance. He's a senator.
Right.
And Vance was talking about Andrew Jackson and how he dealt with the Supreme Court. Basically, he was suggesting that Trump, if he were to be president again and didn't like a ruling, should just do what Jackson did. Ignore it. Now, there's a twist here. That famous Jackson quote about ignoring the court.
Right.
Well, it turns out it's probably not even real. Historians don't think he actually said it. It's like a made-up story that people use to, justify what they want to do. But anyway, even if the quote isn't accurate, Vance's suggestion still shows this trend of maybe not respecting the courts as much as we should.
Right.
And then there's Trump himself, right? He hasn't exactly been quiet about his dislike for some of the rulings from the federal courts, like, his reaction to the E. Jean Carroll case.
Yeah.
And then, on the other side, the Democratic side, Roberts brings up Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Okay.
So she suggested that the Biden administration completely ignore a court decision about the abortion pill, mifepristone?
Right, mifepristone.
This was back when that whole legal fight was just getting started.
Yeah.
It ended up going all the way to the Supreme Court.
Of course.
But even though she said that, maybe in the heat of the moment, it still shows that this idea of ignoring rulings is out there on both sides.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way.
And that just emphasizes what Roberts is saying.
Yeah.
This isn't about, Democrats versus Republicans. It's a bigger problem that we all need to be worried about. So let's talk about why this is such a big deal. Why is Roberts so worried about people maybe ignoring court rulings? What could actually happen? Don't forget to hit that like button and share this deep dive with your friends. We need to get this conversation going.
I think the most immediate thing is, people just lose trust in the whole system.
Yeah.
If it starts to feel like court rulings are optional, then the courts lose their power and the rule of law just kind of goes out the window.
It's a scary thought, right? Like, what's the point of having laws at all if they can just be ignored?
Exactly. And then, people might just start taking the law into their own hands.
Oh, yeah. If they don't think the system is fair or that it works, it's a slippery slope.
It's like one thing leads to another, and suddenly we're like living in chaos. Like no one knows what the rules are anymore. And that affects everyone, It's not just some abstract idea.
Absolutely. I mean, the rule of law, it's how we protect our rights, our freedom. It's supposed to make sure everyone's treated equally, right? And that we can resolve our differences peacefully. If that starts to fall apart, well, it's a threat to our whole way of life, our democracy.
It's like the glue that holds everything together. And if we keep chipping away at it, eventually it's just going to shatter. We need to talk about this more. We should all be asking ourselves, like, what can we do about it? Share this deep dive with your friends and family. Get them thinking about this too. We need to start a conversation.
Yeah, I think awareness is key. If people understand what could happen, maybe we can do something about it.
Right. And it's not just about what's happening right now. This sets a dangerous precedent for the future too.
Well, if we just accept that ignoring court rulings is like normal, then what's to stop future presidents or Congress from doing the same thing?
It could become a free-for-all. Each administration just picks and chooses which rulings they like.
Exactly. And that just throws the whole system of checks and balances right out the window. Like, we're changing the rules in the middle of the game.
Yeah, it creates so much uncertainty. No one knows what to expect. And that's not how you run a stable democracy.
It's like we're building a house on sand. It might look okay for a while, but eventually it's going to collapse.
Yeah.
So the question is, what can Roberts do? What can the court do to push back against this?
It's tough. The court, it needs people to respect its decisions. They don't have an army, right? They rely on the other branches of government and the public to go along with what they say.
Right.
Roberts, he can use his position to speak out, which he's doing. But in the end, it's up to the other branches and to us to actually uphold the rule of law.
It's like he's appealing to our sense of responsibility. Reminding us that we all have a part in making sure our democracy works.
Yeah, he's saying this isn't just a problem for the courts, it's a problem for all of us.
And that's, a really important message. We need to be talking about this, understanding what's at stake. And we need to demand better from our leaders. If you're with us so far, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives like this one.
The more informed we are, the better choices we can make.
So, where do we go from here? It feels like we're at this kind of crossroads. What if Supreme Court rulings just become like suggestions? What if people can just ignore them?
Yeah, it's a turning point for sure. We're seeing people questioning things that have been accepted for forever. And that includes, respect for the courts.
And that brings up, some big questions. Can a system with checks and balances even survive if one branch can just ignore the others?
That's the question we need to be asking ourselves. It's not an easy answer, but it's an important conversation.
And that's what we're doing here, right? Trying to get people thinking. We've looked at what Roberts is saying. We've seen how this is happening on both sides, and we've talked about what could happen to our democracy. But, let's get a little more specific. Let's look closer at those examples that Roberts talked about.
Yeah, if we understand those cases better, we'll have a better grasp of just how complicated this whole issue is.
Okay, so let's go back to J.D. Vance. When he compared Trump to Andrew Jackson, what do you think he was really getting at?
Well, he has this image, right? Like he was a strong leader, someone who wasn't afraid to, shake things up.
Right.
So Vance might be trying to say that Trump should, be more like that, especially when it comes to court rulings he doesn't agree with.
Like, if Jackson could stand up to the Supreme Court, so can Trump.
Yeah, something like that.
And remember, that whole Jackson quote about ignoring the court is probably made up.
It is.
It's kind of funny, right? People use these historical stories, even if they're not true, to try and justify what they're doing today.
It happens all the time.
It really shows you have to, think critically about history. You can't just believe everything you hear. Okay, so let's look at the example from the other side. When Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said that Biden should ignore that ruling about the abortion pill, mifepristone.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Well, you have to consider the context, right? This was a really intense fight over abortion access.
Yeah.
Emotions were running high. And, Ocasio-Cortez was probably feeling like really frustrated with how slow the courts were moving.
Like it was an emergency situation.
Yeah.
And maybe waiting for the courts just wasn't an option.
I think that's part of it. But, even if she said it in the heat of the moment, it still raises those concerns about, respecting the courts.
Right. Because even if you agree with the cause, like if we all just start ignoring rulings we don't like, where does that end?
Yeah, that's the slippery slope argument.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the big takeaway? What do we want people to remember?
Well, I think the most important thing is that, this isn't a partisan issue. It's not about Democrats versus Republicans.
Right.
Roberts is warning everyone, we all need to be worried about this. If we lose respect for the courts, it could hurt our democracy.
It's like a reminder that our system is, well, it's kind of fragile. We have to work to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on all of us, no matter what party we support.
I couldn't agree more.
So that's what we've been talking about today. We look at what Robert said, the examples from both sides, and what all this could mean for the future of our democracy. If you found this deep dive insightful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more conversations like this. And hey, share this video with your friends and family. Let's keep talking about these important issues. Thanks for joining us.